We will hear an address by His Excellency Umaro Sissoco Embalo, President of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Mr. President, Mr. Secretary General, Heads of State and Government, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to offer my congratulations to Mr. Philemon Yang of the Republic of Cameroon on his election as President of the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. I wish him much success in a very complex international context. I also congratulate his predecessor, Mr. Denis Francis, for the results achieved during his term. To Secretary General Antonio Guterres, I express our acknowledgement of his deep commitment to the service of our common ideals and goals in a very difficult international landscape. The world faces grave challenges. The obligation to follow the principles and deliver on the promises of the United Nations Charter is the burden that each one of us carries. We witness devastating wars, the intensification of regional tensions, and other grave threats to international peace and security. Hundreds of millions of people continue to live in extreme poverty, without the basic means of subsistence, without hope for a better future, without human dignity. It's becoming even more urgent to implement reforms in global economic and financial governance, to make it more just, inclusive and equitable. This is the only way to build adequate responses to the challenges that humanity faces. We must fight more efficiently against poverty and social exclusion through concrete actions. Specifically, we must strive to finance development programs, reduce inequalities, protect the environment, and mitigate the effects of climate change. Mr. President, 8 decades after the establishment of the UN in 1945, we live today in a totally different world. We continue to call for reform of the United Nations Security Council, which must consider the interests of Africa under the terms of the Ezulwini Consensus and the Sirte Declarations of Heads of State and Government of the African Union. We must reform the international financial architecture in order to promote greater inclusion, particularly in Africa, and to consider the African continent's role and contribution to the world economy. In this context, we welcome the Summit of the Future. We hope that the Compact for the Future can drive collective efforts to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, and Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, of the African Union. As a member of the Global Working Group on Social Protection for Nutrition, Human Capital and Local Economic Development of the Group of 7+, G7+, we will work together with the other distinguished members on eradicating hunger and progressively achieving all Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. Mr. President, the President of the Republic of Guinea-Bissau, we are committed to fostering dialogue, national reconciliation, consolidation of democracy and the rule of law, as well as our country's sustainable development. Despite the negative impact of the challenging world economic and financial situation, the economy of Guinea-Bissau continues to grow as a result of sound public policies. The practice of accountability has provided greater transparency in the state's economic and financial management. We have adopted measures that, though difficult, were shown to be necessary to drive the private sector and to create a more solid foundation for an economy that is dynamic and inclusive. We are promoting greater participation of women and youth entrepreneurs. We are investing on building and improvement of basic infrastructure, such as roads and other projects. We declared war on corruption and organized crime. We were able to restore trust in our relations with international financial institutions and other bilateral and multilateral partners. We continue to place faith in strengthening Guinea-Bissau's bonds of friendship and cooperation with the world. We remain steadfast on the policy of peace building and peaceful resolution of conflicts in West Africa and in the world in general. It was to this end that in recent months I made visits of friendship and work to Russia, Ukraine, Israel and Palestine. In this context, I reiterate my call for an end to the unjust and very harmful embargo that our brothers and sisters in Cuba have been subjected for decades. Mr. President, distinguished heads of state and government, ladies and gentlemen, I recently had the honor of serving Africa as President of the Alliance of African Leaders for Malaria. We made significant progress in a very difficult world environment. We endeavored to garner support to replenish the Global Fund. We worked with the private sector to promote the production of drugs and nets to combat malaria. We encouraged the transfer of technologies to African companies. We launched End Malaria Councils and funds and supported youth movements against malaria. Despite all the progress achieved, challenges persist. In the next 2 years, ALMA will run a $1.5 billion deficit. Global warming and rains associated with climate change are expanding. The geographic reach of mosquitoes, thus exposing more than 170 million people to the threat of malaria in the African continent. I take this opportunity to congratulate the Executive Secretariat of ALMA for their remarkable service. I also thank all of ALMA's partners for their crucial support in the fight against malaria during my term in office. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I would like, on behalf of the population of Republic of Guinea-Bissau and my own, I would like to reaffirm our determination to continue to contribute to strengthening the friendship among countries and peoples, to promote international cooperation, multilateralism, the peaceful resolution of conflicts, the end of wars and suffering of innocent populations, to hold peace in the world. I thank you.